Hi, most of you know that I've been doing a comprehensive tutorial on my page about Islam. Um, since there's so many attacks coming, I thought it was really important for people to know the truth, which if you watch the news, depending on which news outfit you watch, you may know some things, you may know false things, you may know barely anything about why these people are doing what they're doing. I thought since what happened in Nice yesterday, and may God bless the dead there and their families. I can't even imagine the pain. There's so many children. Anyways, why does this keep happening? Okay, so if you've been reading what I've been posting about Islam, you know that Islam is a faith that was started by Muhammad, and you can go back on my page if you haven't read those earlier postings to get all the information about Muhammad and how he believes he was chosen to be a prophet and what entails all of that, like why Islam started, okay? I'm not going to do that here, but I thought I would like to explain why are these people doing what they're doing. I mean, we have talked about the Quran. This is the one that I use. This translation is by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. This here. And this book is falling apart because I study it quite a bit and I'm trying to figure out, just like everybody else, what's going on. I can't show you the Hadith which is the other holy book that they use, because if it's not a book, it's more like a library. It's everybody who knew Muhammad and wrote down like something he said or something he did. So, but believe me, I've studied quite a bit of that. And but what I'm going to read to you from today is this is the Reliance of the Traveler. It's a classic manual of Islamic sacred law. Okay, so this is something that most Muslims know about, especially those who are in any kind of control or have any power in Islam. It's basically has the laws and how to follow it, and what it backs up, what the ideas come from are from the Quran and from the Hadith. Okay, so I just wanted to talk to you about Jihad today. Okay, so in this book, it's a big fat book. There's a lot of information in here, and I haven't read the entire thing because it's a lot of things I don't need to understand about Islam because I'm not going to be Muslim. But something that we all want to understand better is jihad, and I think you need to understand why these people are doing what they're doing. Because until we know why, we can't, first of all, call it what it is, because it is called for in Islam, and so it's Islam. It's not radical Islam. Islam is radical. That's just it. That's just it. And those who have read my previous postings know that, I think. Okay, so in the Reliance of the Traveler, you've got, you can see here, the English is here, and then the Arabic is here. So this is for anybody and everybody to read who is a Muslim or wants to be a Muslim or wants to understand Islam, I guess. Okay, so what it says in here about jihad, some of what it says is, jihad means to war against non-Muslims and is etymologically derived from the word mujahada, signifying warfare to establish the religion. Okay? So jihad is warfare to establish the religion of Islam. One of the tenets of it is backed up in the Quran in Surah 2:216. Fighting is prescribed for you. In 4:8-9, slay them wherever you find them. In 9:3-6, fight the idolaters utterly. Such hadiths, so the hadiths are those things that were written down by people who knew Muhammad about, it's either what Muhammad said or did. Okay, so when I say hadith, that's what we're talking about. When we say the Quran, then everybody knows what the Quran is. It's kind of similar to the Bible. Such hadiths as the one related to Bukhari, the Prophet said, "I have been commanded to fight people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and perform the prayer and pay zakat," which is a tax that Muslims are supposed to pay. If they say it, they have saved their blood and possessions from me, except for the rights of Islam over them, and their final reckoning is with Allah. The Prophet also says in another hadith, to go forth in the morning or evening to fight in the path of Allah is better than the whole world and everything in it. So it's the best thing that you can do. And Muhammad said so, and Muhammad said Allah said so. Okay? So details concerning jihad are found in the accounts of the military expeditions of the Prophet, which is Muhammad, including his own martial forays, which were, I guess we would call them invasions or attacks now. So in his own attacks on the unbelievers, and those on which he dispatched others. So dispatched is to kill. So Muhammad himself killed other people. Besides sending other people out to do it, he also killed people himself. It also says here in this area, the obligatory character of jihad. See right here? Okay. Jihad is a communal obligation. So it's a community effort. He who provokes the equipment, he who provides the equipment for a soldier in jihad has himself performed jihad. So, and this was a hadith, so this is something that Muhammad said. It's not what Allah said. So if you provide the bombs or the guns or whatever it is, the truck, the planes, if you purposely provide it to somebody who's going to commit jihad, you are fulfilling your jihadi obligation. And then it also says here in another hadith, no, this is in the Quran, 495. Those of the believers who are unhurt but sit behind are not equal to those who fight in Allah's path with their properties and lives. Allah has preferred those who fight with their property and lives and lives a whole degree above those who sit behind. So Allah is saying, unless you're injured, you need to be on the battlefield. If you are not injured and you stay behind, God, He doesn't love you as much as He loves the one that fights. So you can see, if you really believe in Allah, you really believe in Muhammad, you believe in Islam, you would do this. You would fight. I know that after studying this faith, if I believed it, I would do it. I would be in ISIS. I would be fighting. I just, it is the teaching. So it goes on to say that jihad, there are two possible states in respect to non-Muslims. Okay, so that would be us, right? The first is when they are in their own countries, so in the United States or some other country that's not necessarily Islamic or Muslim run, although some people have questions about that right now, but I digress. There are two possible states in respect to non-Muslims. The first is when they are in their own country, in which case jihad is a communal obligation. So it's still a community obligation to commit jihad even in a Christian country. And then the second state is when non-Muslims invade a Muslim country or a country near a Muslim country. in which case jihad is personally obligated upon the inhabitants of that country. So if it's personally obligated, then it's something each individual must do. In the communal obligation, it's something as a community, as a Muslim community, it should be done. So people either need to back others to do the work or do it themselves. But I must say, like, you wonder why they're doing this. Okay, so they're doing it because God says so. But they're also doing it because we're weak now. And that's part of what goes on, the Reliance of the Traveler goes on to say. Okay, so it says, one may leave the jihadi fight if the opposing non-Muslim army is more than twice the size of the Muslim force. Okay, so if we're strong and big and scary, they can leave the jihad. Okay, God said so. And I think that's why we weren't seeing anything happening, or very little happening 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. Okay, that's because they were small. They knew that the West was in charge, that America was strong and going to fight them, and so their call to jihad was not the same as it is now, because they're the stronger and we're becoming the weaker. So, and then it says down here, who is obliged to fight in jihad? Okay, you see right here, who is obliged to fight in jihad? Those called upon to perform jihad when it is communal obligation. Remember, that's in other people's lands, France, all of Europe, the U.S. Are every able-bodied man who has reached puberty and is sane. So that's pretty much everybody who's obligated to fight even in another's land, even if they're not doing anything, just because they're non-Muslim. It also says Muslims may not seek help from non-Muslim allies unless the Muslims are considerably outnumbered and the allies are of willing or of goodwill towards the Muslim. Okay? And then here, I'm going to be reading from the objectives of jihad. Okay? So the objectives of jihad. This is the reason for jihad, right? The objectives. And what their plan, like why are they doing it, right? The caliph, which is, okay, I think in one of my earlier posts, I'm hoping that I explained what the caliphate is. I'm sure it seems like a lot of news agencies have hit on this. It's something that has been part of the Islamic society since the beginning. Okay, Islam grew and grew during the 40 years that Muhammad was implementing his faith. Okay, and during that time they got land and people and slaves and all of that, and that became the caliphate. Okay, it's like the land that's owned by the Muslims. Okay, there was always a caliphate, bigger, smaller, moving in and out as battles were fought and won and lost and so on and so forth, until the early 1900s, when the president of Turkey at the time dissolved the caliphate. Okay, and it was like all around that World War II time, just before Israel was made a nation. There's a lot going on over there. So there hasn't been a caliphate for 70 years. Okay, so they've been working towards having a new caliphate. Now they say they have one. They've said they've had one for the last 2 years. ISIS is in control of it. And the person who's on top of the caliphate, that's called the caliph. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. The caliph makes war upon Jews, Christians, and unbelievers. Okay, so that's the objective of jihad. To make war upon Jews, Christians, and unbelievers. Provided he has first invited them to enter Islam in faith and practice, and if they will not, then invited them to enter the social order of Islam by paying the non-Muslim poll tax, which is called the jizya. The jizya is the tax for Christians and Jews. Now, I believe that unbelievers don't have the option for a jizya. They can either become Muslim or die. The rest of us can pay this jizya and submit to Islam, but we don't actually have to become Muslim, depending on the time. So it goes on to say, which is the significance of their paying it, but the money itself while remaining in their ancestry religions, so they can stay Christian and Muslim. And so that's what they're saying there. So not the money, okay. Until they become, okay. And if the war continues with the Jews or Christians or whatever, until they become Muslim or else pay the non-Muslim poll tax. So they get this idea from a Quranic verse, which is in Surah 9:29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah in the last day and who forbid not what Allah and His messengers have forbidden, like eating, I guess, pork and drinking wine and having dogs and stuff like that, I suppose, who do not practice the religion of truth, which is Islam, being of those who have been given the book, which is the Bible, until they pay the poll tax out of hand and are humbled to Islam. So, and time and place for which is before the final. Okay, this is really interesting, because I don't think I've ever gotten to with you guys about how there is Jesus in the Quran, okay? But I'm telling you, He's not Jesus Christ, Son of God. He is, I would call Him the Muslim Jesus, okay? He's a Muslim, and He's going to come back, and He's going to witness against all Christians and break all crosses and kill all Jews, and He's not Jesus, just so you know, okay? So there's a note here about Jesus, and I want to read it to you because I want you to understand that this is also, because when Jesus returns, they have Jesus returning too, okay? But when He returns, it's not the end of the world yet. He's going to help out. There's this whole end time scenario that I do want to do a post on, but not right now. We're just doing Jihad right now. But anyways, they do have Jesus returning, but He does return to be a witness against Christians, break the crosses, and kill the Jewish people, and help this Mahdi, this 12th Imam, or whatever you want to call him. He's this guy that's going to bring together all of Islam under one tent. You know, no more Sunni, no more Shia. It's just going to be all Islam. And anyways, he'll be able to help Islam conquer the world, and then Jesus comes and helps him, and so many Christians are supposedly going to turn to Muslim because of they were wrong about Jesus. Okay, anyways, so that's the Jesus we're talking about. It's not our Jesus, it's Islamic Jesus. Okay, so it says the time and place for which is before the final descent of Jesus. So paying the tax and allowing any Christians or Jewish people to live in an Islamic nation and pay the tax and not have to become Muslim, but they're not allowed to worship in their own way, they're not allowed to build churches, and so on and so forth. But they can do it as long as they're paying the tax. They're supposed to be, anyways, able to, if they're willing to submit to Islam and so on and so forth. But that's only until Jesus returns, okay? And it says, after His final coming, Jesus, nothing but Islam will be accepted from then on. For taking the poll tax is only effective until Jesus' descent, which is the divinely revealed law of Muhammad. The coming of Jesus does not entail a separate divinely revealed law, for He will rule by the law of Muhammad. As for the prophet saying, so this is something that Muhammad said, I am the last, there will be no prophet after me. This does not contradict the final coming of Jesus, since He will not rule according to the evangelical idea, but as a follower of our prophet, of Muhammad, and of Allah. Okay, so that's when that'll end. So the Caliph fights all other peoples until they become Muslim. This is all still under the objectives of Jihad, okay? And they're not permitted to settle with paying the poll tax, the jizya. All other religions, even idol worshippers, are permitted to live under the protection of the Islamic State if they either become Muslim or agree to pay the poll tax. The sole exceptions to this are apostates from Islam and idol worshippers who are Arabs, neither of whom has any choice but becoming Muslim or to die. Okay? So that's jihad, okay? But there was a couple other things I wanted to read to you really quick. Okay, a little bit about the spoils of war, okay? Because that's part of jihad. It's so the whole thing about if we were to try to have peace with them, okay? It says do not. This is in the Quran, Surah 47:35. So do not be faint-hearted and call for peace when it is you who are the uppermost. So it is when the Muslim is strong, don't be calling for peace then. It's when you're weak. It's when the Muslim's weak and the Jewish, Christian, non-believers are strong, you can call for peace then, because then it keeps you from getting hurt. Do you see what Allah's doing here? He's a slick one, isn't he? Interests that justify making a truce are such thing as Muslim weakness because of lack of numbers or material, or the hope of an enemy becoming Muslim. If the Muslims are weak, a truce may be made for 10 years if necessary. Okay? And then it can be established after another 10 years if the Muslim is still weak, and so on and so forth. So you can see why it seemed to be working, what we were doing when George Bush was in office. Whether you like him or not, I'm not discussing that right now. But I'm discussing what his strategy was, okay? He was strong. The U.S. was strong then. We fought them. We made them feel weak and subdued. And so that's why we weren't having all these attacks during those following 8 years after 9/11, okay? Ever since Obama's been in, and we've been weak. You can see no truce, no peace if the Muslims are the strong ones, and the U.S., the West, the Christians, the Jews are weak. Okay, that's why we need to be strong. That's the important thing. Okay, for you to understand. So, and for the spoils and booty, as for personal booty, anyone who, despite resistance, kills one of the enemy or effectively incapacitates him, risking his own life thereby, is entitled to whatever he can take from the enemy, meaning as much as he can take away with him in the battle, such as mount, which would be horses or whatever, clothes, weaponry, money, women, children. Okay? They can take anything they want. It's theirs. About the tax for the non-Muslims, the jizya. The minimum non-Muslim tax is 4.235 grams of gold per year, every year, as long as you live under a Muslim rule and you want to continue to be Christian or a Jew. As distinguished from Muslims in dress, okay, these are the other things that non-Muslims can and cannot do under Muslim rule, because we might be at some point, and you should know. As distinguished from Muslims in dress, they have to wear a wide cloth belt around them. So it's equivalent to the yellow star in World War II in Nazi Germany. They must keep to the sides of the streets, so they can't go down the middle of the streets. They may not build higher buildings than the highest Muslim buildings. They are forbidden to openly display wine or pork. They are forbidden to ring church bells or display crosses. They are forbidden from reciting the Torah or the Bible aloud or make public display of their funerals or feast days. They are forbidden to build new churches. So if your church gets knocked down or blown up or just falls into disrepair, you cannot build a new church. A non-Muslim may not enter the Mecca sacred precinct under any circumstances or enter any other mosque without permission. If non-Muslim subjects of the Islamic State refuse to conform to the rules of Islam or to pay the jizya, then their agreement with the state has been violated, and if it's been violated, they can be killed. The agreement is also violated if the state has stipulated that any of the following things break it. If the non-Muslim commits adultery with a Muslim woman or marries a Muslim woman. If the non-Muslim leads a Muslim away from Islam. If the non-Muslim mentions something impermissible about Allah, like the Trinity, or if they mention any impermissible thing about Islam, like it being not the true faith. So those are all reasons why it doesn't matter if you're paying the tax or not, you could be killed as a non-Muslim under the Islamic State. There's other things, the penalties for fornication and sodomy, they're all obviously, stoning to death, and it's horrible. Like even here it says a person is not considered to have the capacity to remain chaste if he or she is prepubescent at the time of marital sex. So, because they can get married to a girl at 9, of course she'd be prepubescent. That's kind of not here or there about jihad. I just wanted to point it out because it's disgusting. But hopefully now you understand jihad a little bit better. I will be making some more posts as we go along. Not to bring about anger, but to bring about knowledge, to bring about understanding of why things are happening, because I know that people feel powerless, and you're not. If you know and understand, we're not powerless. If we get strong again, are we ever going to get rid of this ideology? No, I don't think so. I think it's diabolical. I do, and I think that's why it's lasted so long. That's why so many people follow it. But if we're strong, if we encourage our government to be strong, if we encourage our church to be strong, if we encourage the West and Western civilization to be strong, then they will live peacefully with us as long as we're the strong and dominant ones. So that's my point. And keep praying, and keep learning.